Welcome to Believe It or Not, an Interfaith Grand River program. I'm your host, August Edelman, and I'm joined today by Philip Mathai, who is a uh, pastor in the Lutheran tradition up at Mount Zion Lutheran Church.
That's right.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on this.
So I'll start off just by asking you a bit about like your background.
Mhm.
Were you born into the Lutheran Church? What brought you to the ministry?
I was not born into the Lutheran Church, not a cradle Lutheran, as they say, and I was born in India into the St. Thomas tradition, and again, that's a tradition that traces its beginnings back to 52 AD, and it's believed that Apostle Thomas established the church there, and I was part of the Reformed Orthodox tradition within the larger St. Thomas tradition there. And life brought me to the US for further studies, and I grew up in that tradition with my father being a priest and my grandfather and great grandfather, all of them involved in the church. And so, that was part of my life right from the very beginnings, and so steeped in that, but and came to the US for further studies and was introduced to the Lutheran tradition through the seminary that I was at in Chicago, at the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago. And again, circumstances made it that we stay back rather than go back to India, which was our intent at the beginning, but it didn't turn out that way, and that's where I was invited to join the Lutheran Church as a minister of Word and Sacrament, and took a lot of time to think about it and pray about it, and finally I took that step and served in the U.S. for 7 years, and later when we moved again, I moved here because my wife Joy, who teaches at the Lutheran Seminary here, was invited to be on the faculty, and so I followed. And I've been at Mount Zion Lutheran Church. This is my 11th year. Just completed 10 years over there, and so
Wow.
it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm grateful that I'm here now. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So did you meet your wife in the States or did she come with you from India?
Oh, we came from India. When we came from India, we had 2 kids already, and
Oh,
so we were
nice.
married, and in '86. So that was about 11 years before we made the trip here.
Nice. It's like
Yeah,
a whole family adventure.
it was.
And that's so interesting that even though you're in a different sort of branch of Christianity now, that you come from this line of people who were religious leaders.
hmm Yeah. So my dad also taught at a seminary, and so I grew up on a seminary campus, and that was everything that was there. I did not really, to be honest, even think of any other path to go, and this was something that was inbuilt. And I remember after I did my undergrad, my dad got me applications for an engineering college through some friend of his, and but I chose to go to the seminary, just like and my younger brother too did that. And so that was very much built into me, and I just followed that calling as right from that I had right from the time I was a child. And yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's really cool. Um, so I don't know a ton about Lutheranism. We film often here at St. Stephen's, which is a
hmm
Lutheran church, and I know Mount Zion. I've got some friends who go there. What are some of the main ideas in your tradition that sort of speak to your heart?
I would say that I've been influenced both by the Orthodox and the Lutheran traditions in my faith formation.
Mm.
And for example, the whole understanding in Christianity, we perceive God to be triune, the whole notion of Trinity, 3 persons in one. But there is an interpretation of Trinity in the Orthodox, Greek Orthodox Church primarily, where Bishop Zizoulis was the one who initially started it, where he said you can understand three persons as being one only in the context of community and in context of relationship. So it's relationality that determines who and what God is, and in that, when God through the incarnation accepts the created into the divine, also invites us into that communion. So the whole notion of one's existence has to be in communion with God, communion with fellow human beings, and communion with the larger created order. So that's one very significant influence on me. At the same time, in Lutheranism, the whole stress on grace and especially we are beginning Lent, as we talked earlier, and in 2 days we'll start that journey again, the journey ending at the cross and then the empty tomb. And the whole understanding of the cross and the theology of the cross in the Lutheran tradition was something that really spoke to me. And there are various ways of looking at what the cross is, the significance of the cross, what happens on the cross, but the understanding that on the cross, God identifies with the pains and sufferings of this world. God was suffering alongside humankind was something that had not really impacted me, even if it was in the other traditions, as much as it did when I was studying Luther's theology of the cross. And it's on the cross, in the vulnerability of the one hanging there, that we see the majesty and glory of God. And so a very different way of looking at things. And that, in a way, gave me the encouragement and the impetus to get involved in justice issues, for example, because God identifies with the suffering, with the rejected, with the ones in the margins. And again, it's not that is something very new, because right from mid 20th century, the whole notion of preferential option for the poor was something that was talked about in both Protestant and Catholic circles and Orthodox circles. And this, in a way, undergirds that particular notion of God being there with those that are marginalized, with those that are suffering, with those that are violated, with creation that is being violated. So it gives me a much broader way of understanding and looking at what's happening around me, to place my faith in context. And so those may be a couple of, besides others, two of the main things that I would say has shaped my own faith, shaped the way that I try to live my life and the values that I uphold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I think, as an outsider sort of looking at things, you don't always necessarily know about the nuances and these discussions happening around particular symbols or particular ideas. And so that's really great to know. And I'm sure, the people at home are going, oh, interesting. So tell me a bit about how your faith has impacted. You mentioned community before in relation to the Trinity. So how your faith has impacted your sense of community, or how community is affecting your faith.
There are those who would look at faith as something very private. But then again, my understanding of the divine and my understanding of the faith that is made manifest in God and fleshing God's self in Christ tells me that it's something that is community oriented. It has to have relationship as the primary aspect of this that I'm trying to live. And so community has always been something that was of foremost importance to me as a person of faith. And community, not just in terms of a Lutheran community, but community around me, community in need, community that I worship together, community, the primary community of the family that I'm part of, and the extended family. So that way it has, in a way, guided me in how I related, guided me in the value system that I have embraced, and guided me also in the way I live my faith. In the way in a way, enfleshed the word or enfleshed the scripture that speaks to me day to day.
That's interesting. So community is very much in everything, it
Yeah.
sounds. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. Um, can you tell me a bit about a time when maybe your faith presented a challenge to you, or conversely, when you were faced with a challenge and your faith really helped you?
Yeah, the most recent thing that everyone can talk of is COVID.
Yeah, that's true.
When it was a challenge, it was a struggle. And not just in terms of my functions as a pastor, but also in terms of seeing the suffering around. I lost a number of friends back in India, very close ones to COVID. And it was not easy. And again, the whole notion of why. Uh, Crying out as to why this needs to happen. But then again, the whole understanding of this God who suffers and journeys with us was something that gave me strength. And yeah, something that evolved out of Mount Zion's and COVID experiences or the COVID sojourn was Vespers. We meet. Vespers are evening prayers that
Oh, okay.
we have. And so we would meet online 7 days a week to begin with, uh, every day at 7. Sundays after service or whatever, days off, it didn't matter. But initially I took that commitment to meet. And I realized that it was something that strengthened and gave all of us that what's the word that I'm looking for, that courage to face the times that we were in, and also that support from each other, which really mattered. And we continued that. Though we don't meet all 7 days, we meet Mondays through Thursdays, which is 4 days a week. And we continue to do that. And that personally has been something that encourages me, that I can fall back on. That community, though it is small, we share, we open our hearts to each other, we support each other, we are there for one another. Not that we don't care about the others, but this is a core group through which we also reach out to others. And it's not uh, that we exclude others, but we hope others joined in. But due to various reasons, commitment every evening for an hour. It's not just a prayer and we finish, but we talk. We talk about issues. We talk about theology. We talk about politics. We talk about social issues, all sorts of things. And it's been um, uh, enlightening, and things that you would never think of comes out of those folks that are part of the group. And it's it's been really um, encouraging to be part of the group. And yeah, so that is something that came out of COVID, a time when all of us were in the dumps, but at the same time just coming together, spending time in prayer, then talking about faith issues, talking about other issues, just pulled us out of the dumps in a way. And yeah, and it's really something that I look forward to.
That's so impressive that you guys have continued it,
Mm-hmm.
even through to now. Because I think there were a lot of these really beautiful moments during those times, especially early on, of people kind of coming together. But it's easy to let that fizzle. So it's really impressive that you guys have kept it up. You've sort of, in talking about kind of community and these things that you're doing with the community at your church, what are some other parts of sort of your job as a pastor, or part of what you're doing at Mount Zion, or maybe out in the community?
Mount Zion, I'm fortunate is one of the congregations that's very open and welcoming and very conscious about the needs of the community around them. And again, during COVID, when the students were going through food insecurity, for example,
Yeah.
it was brought to our notice through Luther, and they talked to us about it and seeing what we can do. At the same time, there was somebody in our congregation who was of Caribbean descent that joined our church in 2018. She was a retired, she had a restaurant business and she retired from that. And she talked to me, and she was again very much community oriented, and her passion was to serve the community in whatever way possible, though she had retired. And then she realized we had a commercial kitchen at Mount Zion, which was being used for maybe a few times a year for funerals and special occasions. Otherwise, we were not using it. So she also said, could we use the kitchen to do something to the community? And our parishioners also at that time was concerned about older folks in the community that would welcome help in terms of preparing food or things like those. And so we discussed, and out of that was born the Mount Zion Kitchen. So every Thursday, the whole thing starts on Tuesday, and Wednesday volunteers come, they're cutting vegetables and whatever, and the cooking happens on Thursday, and we distribute around 160 meals.
Wow.
Both to the community and through Luther. They just come and take trays of food, and they distribute about 100 odd every week, and we would distribute around 50 to 60 pack of served packages to those in the community. And so that's something that, again, came out of the passion for justice, passion for those that are suffering, and passion for those to serve those who were in need. And it's been going on and going on well, and that's something that we are really proud of. And also service to the seniors in the community. We have something called Mount Zion Cafe that happens there, which we did a survey on where we should focus about 5 years ago, or even more, about where we should focus our attention, given the needs within the congregation and the surrounding community. And it was felt that service to the seniors was one area that we could focus on. And so every other Wednesday, so it's we don't have it every week, so twice a month we do. And seniors come together just for a time of fellowship, and they'd start with coffee, have fellowship, and finish with lunch. That is pre-COVID. But we have not started the lunch again since COVID, but we still come and meet, and the hope is that that would also come back to what it was prior to COVID. And we have a food cart program, for example. And so all these reflect the passion of the congregation to be there for the other rather than just for themselves. And that's something that I really am proud of, and to be part of this journey with the congregation.
Yeah. And all coming back to community again, right? Like, one of the best ways to build community is eat together.
Yeah, that's right.
That's really great. Thank you. So my last question is sort of, if you have kind of one thing that you were thinking, oh, I hope I get to talk about this today, or, oh, I'd like to tell the people at home about this, whether about you or your tradition, or, you know, a common misconception, or whatever you're thinking, if there's something you kind of want to share.
I did mention this in my comments, but then again, the whole understanding of faith as something, as a Christian, my faith is modeled on Jesus Christ. And the incarnation itself was something where we see God coming down, giving the privileges and becoming one among us. And in Philippians, there is this whole thing of self-emptying, God, Jesus self-emptying his divine self and becoming one among humans. And that is something that we try to enflesh or live out in our living as a community at Mount Zion, and me personally. It's not about me. It's about being there for the other. How can I serve the other? How can I serve the larger created order? Because again, we are all placed in this world as stewards of the created order, as the keeper of our neighbors. And how can we be faithful in that? And I guess if all of us uh, recognize that, and live together, we would have, um, yeah, a better world in every sense of the word. And so that's something. A lot of times, faith is used in terms of acquiring things, and the whole notion of if you're faithful, blessings are seen in terms of material gain and other ways that one gets something out of the whole experience. But my thing is, it's you're blessed to be a blessing. Not blessing is not an end in itself, but rather it is something that you are given so that the other is also blessed, and being there for the other, being there for each other, loving one another, loving created order. That's what God intends of us as human beings. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for being on the show. It was lovely to have you on and get to know you a little bit better and talk about things.
Thank you. It was nice to be on the show. Wonderful. And thank you for having me. Yeah.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on Believe It or Not.